Welcome. My name is Nick Craig. This is the Leading from Purpose podcast. Today, my special guest is someone who I've known for, at this point, probably almost 10 years, Jostein Solheim. When I met Jostein, he was CEO of Ben Jerrys, and he stayed there for, how was it, probably 8+ years. These days, he is now running Unilever's $4 billion food and refreshment business in the United States, which is basically everything in the food store they provide, which is a wide range of products. So he's in the middle of this incredible challenge of how do we keep the grocery stores full. What we're going to talk about today are two things. First of all, we're going to talk with Jostein around his purpose and how it has impacted him over time. But the second part is we're going to really talk about the shift that he's experienced on what does he need to do, how does he need to lead, how he needs to be versus do as a leader in the coronavirus challenge we currently are experiencing. What is that big shift? And he's got some wonderful insights that I'm looking forward to us talking about. Jostein, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nick. Good to see you again, virtually.
Exactly. And so, Jostein, why don't you tell us what your purpose is and why that's your purpose? And let's talk a little bit about the journey you've been on around purpose in the last 10 years.
Great. Yeah, no, so my purpose is quite apt for this moment. And I think we've phrased it in a few different ways and it's gotten sharper over the years, but it's sort of three parts to my purpose. First, it is about helping people thrive. I'm a big team believer. I believe in people driving the outcomes. Helping people thrive through ambiguity and paradoxes. Welcome to my world. This is sort of my wheelhouse.
Well, if you didn't have enough, you probably have at least enough now.
There's enough. And then the third part is, what really motivates me, which is when it really matters for the world. So, and all three were important, helping people thrive is delivering through others. Ambiguity and paradoxes was a lot of the conversations we went through. I thought I was normal and that my perception of risk and danger was normal. And then I discovered that I was a little bit off the spectrum on that. And I'm actually a lot more comfortable than most people apparently are.
You are, yes.
But I'm also motivated by things that matter, things that have real impact, things that impact society. And when it doesn't, I can get demotivated and, slightly destructive. So that's how my purpose works.
Okay, so when I first met you, you were trying to make a decision as to whether you were going to stay at Ben & Jerry's or take some type of a promotion or something. So would you be willing to share with us sort of what the impact of purpose has had on you, especially in those early days when we started working together?
Yeah, I think you said it to me once, when purpose is in the room, it's right there with you and you can't ignore it. And, I came here and from a sort of a family and personal situation, it could have been good to potentially also move on. But, my wife was super committed to Ben & Jerry's. And actually the reason I came here in the first place, because she said, that's not a job, that is you. And it's true, after 2 years, we got to that milestone where, we have to decide if we stay, do we go? And it had become very clear to me that this was not a job, it was a calling. And the impact that I could have on society through that role and living in this intersection between business, a global business, and social and economic justice.
Yeah.
Just provided so many paradoxes and ambiguity, so much energy. And then, of course, being a business that is so people first, it really was impossible to find another job at that time that could match that in any formal way. So we decided, we'll stay, and we ended up staying for 8 years.
Wow. And so one of my favorite stories you've told me, which I'd love these guys to hear as well, is so when you've decided to stay, which I think surprised a lot of people, because that promotion was probably what most people expected anybody to take, and you decided not to take it. There was a test, and I think Steve, your head of marketing, or came in with a test of some idea he had. And so would you share us that journey? Because I think the interesting thing is that everybody sees, I think sometimes people see purpose as this Pollyannic thing, which is you get it and everything turns out. And on the surface, it looks like that's what happened. But my experience of it, and I think what you've experienced, is there's places where you really get tested. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah. No. I mean, this Ben and Jerry's is still in Vermont. The office is a couple of miles from where the original scoop shop was. It's a closed, it's a small community and a very tight community. So when you come as an outsider to make change, to turn around, it takes a while before you're accepted and seen as being fully committed. One of the unlocks that I had for getting this organization to thrive and to excel was to remove this idea that the owner, Unilever, would stop them from pursuing their ambitions.
So Unilever bought Ben & Jerry's at some point, yeah? Because I don't know if everybody knows that. So Unilever is like this big billion-dollar thing. It's like P&G. They fight over everything. So Ben & Jerry's is this little guy who basically told the man to screw it, right? And then all of a sudden, the man buys it.
And it's this was one of the acquisition deals that had the most documentation in the history of Unilever, because it was a very complex deal, because it became in some ways the forerunner to the B Corp movement.
Okay.
So to instill and keep the authenticity of Ben & Jerry's and its rebellious nature, Unilever agreed to have an independent board of directors that self-select and that has primary responsibility for the social mission and the integrity of the brand. And this board can stop any action by the CEO that they deem goes against that.
Wow.
So Unilever really ceded a lot of control over the core of Ben & Jerry's to a board, which sort of then became this multi-stakeholder model that we now know as benefit corporations and the B Corp movement. So Unilever acquired Ben & Jerry's in 2000. And I came there pretty much 10 years after that.
Okay.
And was there to reinvigorate that way the original intent of the agreement, with the brief of re-radicalizing Ben and Jerry's. So that was
given your purpose, now it makes complete sense, right?
Now it makes sense. At the time, it was like, okay, are you sure you really want this? But if you do, we can do it. But it wasn't totally clear why. And coming back to your question, the point was, to get this organization to thrive, they needed to know that I had their back and that nobody was going to stop them from taking the actions that were the right actions. Because there's an easy story to tell yourself that, I have this really good idea, but somebody outside somewhere will stop me from doing it, so I'm not going to pursue it. So I was convinced, and I was right, that there was a lot of really great ideas hiding in the team.
Yeah.
And they just had canned them because they didn't think anybody would run with it. So in the summer, that summer was the summer of Occupy Wall Street. And Ben & Jerry's was the only corporation that supported Occupy Wall Street, the anti-corporate movement against the one percenters. It was an amazing summer for me early on in my leadership role there, discovering this crazy paradox of being a business supporting an anti-business movement and all of that. We came out of that period into the fall, and the heat of the Occupy Wall Street movement sort of started to fade a bit. And we were coming into deciding on what are we going to launch as a seasonals. And this is when
seasonal being for the season of Christmas.
Christmas holiday period.
Holiday period. Okay.
Put in a special edition. So in comes my CMO, who's been at the company for 30 years.
That means Chief Marketing Officer, right?
Chief Marketing Officer. and two of his learned teammates, and they proceed to pitch a new flavor called Schweddy Balls. Now, at this stage, I have lived in America for 4 years.
Right.
So I do
You're not used to people talking about Schweddy Balls. Is that what you're saying?
that, and I did not have the cultural context of this idea.
Well, I don't think anybody has the cultural context for those two words.
So you can imagine now, this is a food product. There is just nothing appealing about those two words at first. And you go like, okay, remember, your mission is that there's nobody there to stop a good idea. So they then proceed to act out this skit from Saturday Night Live with Alec Baldwin, and then the NPR presenters, and Alec Baldwin is Mr. Shreddy, who's a baker, etc. They got a YouTube video up and they showed it to me and they said why this was really, really funny as a whole.
Right, and it was a skit that was done around the holidays.
It's a skit.
So it's a Christmas holiday thing, right? So yeah, so everybody was dressed up. Okay.
So Alec Baldwin in this skit, and this has become a bit of a Saturday night classic. So it has been replayed and replayed. And it's the whole NPR interview where you're on the radio. He is a baker. He makes these chocolate balls, and he's got this big tray of glistening chocolate balls. And this whole conversation is around these Mr. Shreddy's balls, and it is very funny. Obviously, humor is really hard to judge. It's really, really hard to judge.
Especially when it's sitting in a frozen section in the grocery store.
But these guys were so convinced that this would be just the right side of bad taste and that it would make people re-engage with Ben & Jerry's at a level that was unprecedented. So we went ahead. Some people at Unilever, including the then person who is in my job now, thought it was a really bad idea, but I had the authority, and I used my authority to launch the product. All of the major retailers in America did list it. The customer teams thought this was hilariously funny. So we launched it. And you can imagine every news station in America loved this straight up and down. And today, Ben & Jerry's unveiled a new flavor called Shreddy Balls. And then you see like a little twitchy smile as they try to say totally deadpan. And then was
Alec Baldwin ever knew what he'd done.
Oh, right? Alec was very keen to. I'm sure. His
personality fits this flavor perfectly.
So this thing that made it huge, of course. A couple of other retailers decided to delist it. It created a search for this product, a mania for this product. People also took, myriads of pictures of other offensive products at Walmart and sent it to the leadership team at Walmart. So it was a fascinating explosion of attention to this product. And our sales went up by 6-7%. Total company sales. Total company sales. Because people were searching for this thing. We had waiting lists.
So your sales across all of your products went up because of this one.
It just drew so much attention. But then the brilliance of the whole execution was we then didn't say anything more. We didn't do anything more. Because it's a funny joke, but it's only funny once. And you can't let it go for too long. So we just pulled quietly back, and this legend was born.
But I think that's a perfect example of you stepping into your purpose and living it, where it would have been easy to just say no.
Yes, yes.
And so my sense is there's been multiple opportunities for you to say no over the years, and then you said yes. I know that you guys have been involved in social movements, whether it's Black Lives Matter or same-sex marriage, or a number of things you guys have been involved in. So I was kind of surprised when I got working with you guys, how much that's a key part of your ethos.
Oh yeah. And that's about stepping in as well. I mean, supporting Black Lives Matter from Vermont, which is a state that's 96% white. and stepping into that, that was probably the hardest journey of a 2-year learning journey for how we could play a role in that movement. It was also probably one of the things that created the biggest backlash against the company, from just people that were very engaged and angry. So it was a fascinating, but that was a 2-year journey. We also stepped into the climate justice movement, and we campaigned, for a binding climate agreement in Paris, across the world. And again, people saw that as a paradox, but you're an ice cream company. You use milk, you have cows, you have a carbon footprint. And again, that did not deter us from being the official ice cream of the United Nations, Save Us World, and
Wow. Okay.
ice cream inside the blue zone, which is where the actual negotiation was taking place, and reminding politicians from around the world that our fans were holding them accountable for coming up with a deal to save the world.
So these are all wonderful examples of you stepping into leading from your purpose in this context of leading. What I want to do now is take a moment and shift.